Welcome back, everybody, to the Fifth Generation Leadership Podcast. Got Grant and Mark Zito here with us. Looking forward to meeting you, Mark. I haven't even had a chance to meet or talk to you myself yet, so this will all be, new to all of us as far as myself and the viewing audience. Sounds like Grant knows quite a bit about you.
We've met. I'm sorry. Gosh. My screen, I don't like how this all looks with the.
Oh, okay. I got you.
What do I do? What do I do with
Okay.
that? It's going to distract the shit out of me this entire time.
Yeah, go into
the Fifth Generation Leadership Podcast with Grant and Rod.
Oh, wow. That's so busy. That's terrible.
There you go.
No, it's not.
No, it looks good. You look
You get
human.
to see all the things. Like I got my printers running back there.
Yeah.
I got my dead animals on the wall. I mean,
I feel you. That's why
real life.
I find this empty patch of wall in between two doors, and I just set up like this every time. So I'm still working.
I'm gonna have like bookshelves behind me.
Yeah.
Right now there's just painter's tape to mark where the shelves are going.
I have an idea. Wait, did I just cut out?
No, you're good.
Okay.
I personally, though, I think it looks good. It doesn't look cluttered. You look like a clean person. You got some deer racks on the wall.
I took a shower. Look at me.
No, I like it. I like it as is.
All right, stick with this.
I like it as is too. If I didn't have yelling, screaming kids and barking dogs running around all over the place.
Oh, you've got that too?
Yeah. I probably wouldn't be, isolated in my room right now next to a wall between the bathroom and the closet. So
okay.
I'm still working on my own home office, so I feel you, man. So,
yeah, one day. Are you still in?
I am not. Nope.
Lucky bastard.
Oh, so you are. So I'm assuming we're gonna get to that. So
yeah, we get to make our disclaimers.
Right. It's very nice to meet you. This has all been arranged through Grant, like I said. So I haven't even had the privilege to get to know you yet. I was hoping to chat your ear off and give my introductions before we started hitting recording, but I was like, you know what, this is more natural. So I'm gonna pass it over to Grant and let him give you the introduction that you deserve. So Grant?
Perfect.
Yeah. So Mark and I originally got linked up through the vast network of unvaccinated service members, fighting these unlawful mandates. And, on that note, we're both active duty. So give my disclaimer. I think I do it every time. I think it should be clear at this point that I'm not speaking for the DoD or the Army.
Yeah. I'll put it in the description box.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, so Mark's one of the folks that have been more active, and I know he has a long commute. So every once in a while I get hit up and we get to chat during his commute, which is always good fun and good conversation. I know he's got a passion for freedom and liberty the same way I do. I know he's a big Settlers of Catan fan, so we haven't been able to get together in real life in order to play Catan, but I'm looking forward to doing that at some point. And then the other thing I know is you're a Naval Academy guy, right? And a currently lieutenant commander.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
So hang on, I'll do my disclaimer. That way we can talk.
Yeah.
So I don't speak for the DoD, the DON. My opinions are my own, and all of the other things that go along with that. I feel like I've heard it a million times, but I couldn't say it for $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, so that's I'll just leave it at that and turn it over to you, Mark. Because I like to start from ground zero, but like your background, your childhood, what made you decide to be motivated to go to the Naval Academy? Because I know going to one of the service academies is no joke. It's not like something you can just stumble into. You need some serious letters of recommendation. You need to have a seriously impressive academic record. So you have to be motivated in order to end up there. So I'm curious as to what kind of forces conspired to motivate you to want to take that path in life.
Well, gosh, grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. One of the people actually from here joined the Navy. My dad was a career naval officer. He enlisted in 1974 against his parents' better wishes. Ended up in Virginia Beach area and kind of stuck around ever since. So yeah, he did spend 32 years in, eventually got a commission as a warrant officer in the Navy. And that's a little bit different from a warrant officer in the Army in some respects. As far as I know, for the Navy, you have to be at least a chief, so an E7, and you have to have a certain amount of time in. So generally warrant officers tend to be technically proficient, extraordinary technical liaisons between the enlisted community and the wardroom. And I watched him go from ship to ship to ship growing up. It looked like fun. You know, our bedtime stories growing up were sea stories, right? This is me in front of a pyramid. Hey, Dad, how do I go get in front of a pyramid? Well, you got to join the Navy and get on a ship. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do that. And then went through school. And I can remember vivid as day. They said, where do you want to go to college? I said, I'm going to go to the Naval Academy. And they go, well, you're not particularly athletic and your grades are okay. That might be a long road. You're going to have to, bone up on that stuff. So went through high school, ended up doing all the varsity sports, got in shape, got good grades, got to the end of high school. And they said, well, you're not, and this was 2004. So some of the things like the big thing then, we were calling them the set asides, right? Are you a minority? Are you a athlete? Are you do you have a dadmiral, right? That's someone whose dad is dad's an admiral, right? It made sense at the time. Blue chip athletes, that kind of thing. I didn't have any of that. I ended up getting picked up by the U.S. Naval Academy Foundation, which is a charitable organization that sponsors students from around the country to do effectively 13th grade. So you can go to several schools. They have a list. I picked one. It was called Northwestern Preparatory School out in Crestline, California, out towards Lake Arrowhead, Big Bear area, just north of the Inland Empire there. Did that for 6 months, a semester, came back to Virginia Beach area, went to community college, and then ended up at the Naval Academy. And at the Naval Academy, it may be similar for everywhere, but they give you a stack of papers. I mean, it must have been this thick, right? Here, sign this, sign this, sign this, sign this. They said one of them, towards probably the bottom, said, when you graduate, you'll do what you're told. We'll take your considerations we'll take your preferences into consideration, but ultimately this is the Navy and you'll do what you're told. Said, okay, sounds good. Sign everything. And fast forward to my senior year, I was going to be a ship driver, just like, I was going to be a surface warfare officer. I knew that kind of going in. I didn't really want to be a pilot. They had a big commitment. I still wasn't Marine material, and I'm certainly not a spec ops type. It's not me. But I was still pretty bent on going to Egypt and seeing a pyramid. So that's I decided to drive ships. And so Halloween comes by. I remember it clear as day. It's just so vivid. My master chief, the senior enlisted advisor for our company, came in. She goes, hey, Mr. Zito, I need to see you in my office. And I'm thinking, Master Chief, it's 8:30 at night. What are you still doing here? And she goes, no, I need to see you. It's really important. So I come in, I sit down, and she goes, you want the good news or the bad news? And I said, well, hit me with the good news. And she goes, it's not submarines. And that's Navy speak for, oh, you just got nuke drafted. You're gonna go to power school and prototype. I said, this is some kind of cruel joke because I'm a history major and my grades still aren't all that great. She goes, oh no, this is for you. So before I knew it, I was, they were sending me to nuclear power school. I went to my ship. I went to power school prototype. Ended up on an aircraft carrier. Tell you what, man, just the adventure continues, right? But this was in 2010, 2011. No, graduate 2009. First ship 2009. 2 years, got qualified, surface warfare. It's kind of like a ship driver getting their pilot wings. We call them water wings affectionately sometimes, but yeah. And that's kind of how the whole career got started. And now, and then then they changed the terms of employment. At some point in 21, they said, go get a vaccine. And I said, yeah, sounds good. Not doing it. And just kind of rode the wave. Incidentally, I went to school with some of the other people that are in the crew, like Rob Green and I went to college together. I've known him for a long time. And then a couple of the other guys, we served together over the years.
Right on. So, so you were surface warfare first, and then, just because of Navy requirements, they needed more nuclear officers, and so you just got HAYU'd and tagged with it.
All right. Yes. So all of the nuclear officers on an aircraft carrier are surface warfare officers. My intention was to be a surface warfare officer. I didn't want anything to do with the nuclear community. And when they look at the numbers and they say, well, we need more of you. And I said, well, okay, I don't want to do it. And they said, well, remember you signed this piece of paper. I said, well, then I guess I have to try. And what's that?
Sorry. So it's probably comparable to like an 11X contract between if you're going to become infantry or an 11 Bravo or a mortarman. It sounds like kind of same aspect, but Navy side, a lot bigger guns and whatnot. But sounds like they need to fill numbers. They're both the same thing, fulfill the same job criteria, but when they need more in a over on that side, then they close the gate, they close the gates and send people over. That's what you mean?
It's sort of similar. What they do is they say, all right, we need more surface, or we need more nukes, right? So either submarines or surface. And then they say, well, this is a terrible job, so we're going to try to pay you off. And then when that doesn't work, they say, well, you have grades and you went to the Naval Academy, so we know you're qualified to go, right? So what was happening about 50, 60 years ago, and it was rolling back real far, but they weren't, or Admiral Rickover, father in Navy nuclear power, decided that everybody who went to the Naval Academy would be minimally qualified to go to nuclear power school. And that way they could make sure that they got a third of their nuclear officers from the Naval Academy. And that's how everyone who goes takes 3 semesters of calculus, a semester of at least probability and statistics or DIFIQs. Everyone takes thermodynamics, everyone takes hydrostatics, everyone takes a couple semesters of electrical engineering and chemistry on top. So we have effectively minors in engineering, general engineering, and that's how they are able to just say, hey, you're the guy. You're our guy. You're so brave, talented, and good looking. You're going to power school.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
My next question is, what is it about that job that's not desirable? Because you say it's like there's a consensus that it's not a desirable job and it's really hard to get numbers for it. What is it about that job that that makes it not something that people compete for. In fact, quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. I think so. I don't hear that I'm poo-pooing the job. For some people, it's
I don't.
absolutely perfect.
But,
like that's not the goal. The difficulty is the margin for error is so radically slim that it increases the stress levels to the point where someone will just say, I just can't. Or
you could get canceled for nothing, essentially.
honest to goodness, right? So as a plug for Navy nuclear power, I can't. We park our ships in some of the coolest places on the planet. Right. I've been stationed in San Diego. I've been stationed in Tokyo Bay at Yokosuka Naval Station, all right, in Japan. Hawaii, right there in Pearl Harbor, Guam, beautiful tropical places, right? Well, let's pretend something were to go wrong on a American nuclear powered vessel. Next thing you know, you're home ported Aleutian Islands, right? It's a horrific PR scenario. So the standard is so high. And also we police ourselves. Naval Reactors is its own nuclear regulatory commission, right? The 4-star, the 4-star in front of NAV C08, who runs Naval Reactors, is also a undersecretary or deputy undersecretary of the Department of Energy. So the stakes are so high. All right, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, on a submarine at least, you're limited on manpower. So if you're assigned to a submarine, it's like being married to 2 women at once, right? One of them doesn't understand. The other one's a, raging angry woman. And sometimes they just trade places and you can't really tell which one's which.
Right.
It's similar being on an aircraft carrier. If there's work to be done, there's no help's coming. You're it. So when I was on the carrier, I was pushing at least 90 or 100 hours a week, and that's pier side.
So high speed, high drag, high stress, high maintenance, pretty much
everything all at once.
Yep. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they feed you mush, right? Especially on a submarine. Hey, we're out of food, but you're up.
Right. Yeah.
So no one wants the job. I think we started my year group with at least over 100 nuclear surface officers, and year group 09. So it's been almost a short 14 years. We're down to 14.
And it's probably only getting worse. I can only imagine how many people are rushing to join the military at this point right now. So regardless of whether it's like the enlisted side or the officer side or Army, Navy, whatever, I can imagine those numbers are only dwindling, more and more, or at least of the good type of people that you would want filling those positions, Well,
with that training and that experience, are there issues with retention? Not only because the job is hard, but because there are civilian equivalent positions that are high paying, less stress, etc.
Extraordinary issues with retention. And that's one of the drivers, Grant. So on the enlisted side, when somebody does they sign up for a 6-year contract. At the 2-year point, they let you what's called star reenlist. And that's where whatever rank you are, they give you, they bump you up to 2nd class. So E5, instantly E5 at 2 years. And then they pay you anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000, depending on what your position is in the plant, and that's for another 6 years. So at the 2-year point of your 6-year contract, you get to sign up for another 6 years for a total of 8 years, where they bump you up to E5 and they pay you a whole gob of money, and they still can't get kids to do it.
Right. You mean in the form of bonuses, obviously not like annual pay, but bonuses.
Bonus.
Yeah.
Right. That's a bonus. The money's even better on the officer side, and they still can't do it.
Right.
So
the officers actually get bonuses in the Navy?
they get more.
Because they don't in the Army, right?
So
Well, it depends on the profession, right? So if there's professions where there's critical need and it's hard to retain officers, then there's definitely retention bonuses associated with those specific MOSs. To use medical in my field as an example, physical therapists don't get retention bonuses because physical therapists tend to really like being physical therapists in the military.
So they stay in their career.
So physical therapists, once they join, like, we're not hurting for physical therapists because every year, like 100 people apply and only like 20 people get direct commission.
Every officer I had ever met in the Army says that officers aren't entitled to bonuses, physicians assistants, they're completely different, where they get paid way more on the civilian side, so they're really difficult to hold on to.
It's good that you're both sitting down, because for 1 year of work, if I were to sign a contract, the smallest contract I could sign is for 3 years. I can sign up for 7. Each year is an extra $45,000 a year annually.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm a surface warfare officer, it'd be another 75,000 years. Feels like
damn, that's a contract you don't want to sign.
Yeah, no. So for 3 years, effectively, it's $181,000 extra.
Right.
That's crazy.
And does that?
And they still can't do it.
So for the Army, so like, let's say you initially sign a 4-year contract, and your reenlistment window opens when you're at 3 years in, and you reenlist for another 3 years, you're really only adding on 2 more years onto your contract, because you still had 1 year remaining at the time of reenlisting or recommissioning or whatever. Does that work out the same way with you guys, or does it go off from your actual exit service date, or whatever the original date was supposed to be, plus 3 years, or whenever you agreed to do some more, and then whatever was remaining, added in there?
Well, because I told them hard no.
Yeah.
I didn't look that hard.
Yeah.
But I think the way it was supposed to work out for me is they would have let me, once my window opened up, which was about 6 months out, they would have let me re-sign the next contract.
Right.
And it would have just started right there.
Right. That's what I always liked about the Army, because you could ultimately, like, especially when the windows were opening up a lot sooner than like 12 months out, when it was at like 24 months or 24 months, I could be 2 years out from the end of my contract, re-enlist for 6 years to get the bigger bonus, but really I'm only adding on 4 years to what I was originally supposed to get out at, if that makes sense. I mean, it all sucks at the end of the day, but
it does. So for officers, I think this is officers in general, Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's you serve at the will of the president, or at the pleasure of the president, and until you actively resign your commission, they're just going to keep cutting you orders.
Okay.
So there is
you have to submit an unqualified.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep.
And you can't do that. Well, you can do that if you have a service obligation, but there's money usually associated with these service obligations, and it also changes how likely they are to let you resign. So when they were cutting back on officers around 2014, they had officer separation boards. And during that time frame, there were people with additional active duty service obligations, or what we, an ADSO for short.
Right.
That they were letting go because they were trying to get rid of people anyway. People that say
Right.
had loan repayment, for some tens of thousands of dollars. And they said, you know what, I'm going to submit my unqualified resignation. A lot of those requests were approved.
Yeah.
And a lot of those monies were not recouped because they wanted to get rid of officers, because it was cheaper to not pay them, because they were kind of downsizing as the global war on terror was, becoming more and more constrained.
Right.
What I'm curious about, and since this is fifth generation leadership, let's talk a little bit about leadership. I'd be really curious, Mark, with that, austere environment, being on a ship, like you said, there's a job to do, there's nobody else to do it. I'd love to hear some, anecdotes, some best
ship
practices,
stories,
lessons learned. Yeah, some ship stories pertaining to leadership and the challenges that you faced in that environment. Especially since everybody's having to work so hard and put in tons of hours. Is that something that you could speak to? Is there anything that comes to mind?
And before that as well, or to add in, if you could add in like the longest amount of time that you've been out at sea, because I think once you start talking about isolation and whatnot, you're really talking about crushing morale of people not wanting to do stuff, people not wanting to work, people just missing home. And that's where the real true leadership, ability comes in at, is when you have people shutting down, not wanting to do anything, So I just wanted to add that in there, because I am curious, what's the longest you spent out?
Yeah, the longest I've been out to sea, maybe about 40 days.
Okay.
I haven't done any crazy stretches of no liberty.
Right. Is that something that's just not like a big thing in your field then?
No. It happens. I've just been fortunate.
Okay.
Gotcha. Like that is strictly dumb luck.
Gotcha.
One of my classmates, he went on deployment in, I think they left in like February of 20. And they went from Norfolk to Rota. Rota is in Spain. They had a brief stop for fuel, brief stop for provision. And when they left the pier in Rota, they did not pull back into land for 215 days.
Right.
Wow.
It's a long
and
time
that was over 2020.
Yeah.
And that was in order to protect them from the most dangerous virus to ever, plague humanity.
Worse than the Black Plague.
Way worse. All right. So for me, I think, the things that really boost morale or can pump morale are going to be things like regular mail hits, right? It turns out Amazon does deliver to the ship.
Yeah.
Just the craziest thing, right? So Amazon will deliver. We've gone about 30-ish, 35 days without a mail hit before. And what they do is, when you're out to sea, they get two ships and they call it replenishment at sea, or a RAS. And it's all, you could YouTube it. It's actually kind of neat, but they take the two ships and you pull up alongside a container ship, or not a container ship, like a cargo ship, right? It's got fuel on it, tanker, and they'll pass 1 million gallons of fuel. They'll pass food, so dry stores, refrigerated stores, and frozen stores. That's where all the ship's work stops. And everybody, no matter what they're doing, is unpacking pallets.
That's the PX run right there, pretty much.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
And all sorts of goodies come across. Everything from ice cream and frozen pizza and chicken wings to stuff for the ship's store. So things like, time to take the puppy out. things like cigarettes and toothpaste, and then repair parts for the ship. Right. So on my first ship, when I was an ensign, I was on the email distro when a log of Copenhagen came over the wire. Oh, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal for morale, right?
Yeah.
When email goes down, morale tanks hard. So leadership out to sea. I think the way you the way I would deal with when the days got long and got difficult, I would usually hit the rower, spend a lot of time on the rowing machine. They do have weight rooms on board, but they're either way too small or way too crowded. And a small crowded weight room is just, it's not fun at all. So I had a kettlebell and a pair of lifting gloves. Right. And the lifting gloves weren't to actually lift anything, but if you've been on a ship before, any of the weather deck spaces or the outside spaces have, it's called non-skid. And it's pretty much designed to take the skin off of everything you own. So having a set of weight gloves and a deck of cards and a jump rope and a kettlebell, and, just how brutal can you make this for yourself, because you've got all the time. Where are you going to go? Right. You're not going anywhere. Other stuff that I found helps is just taking care of your team, right? Try to protect them from the stupid, especially on an aircraft carrier, where you have the reactor department is its own department. There's about 400 people, men and women there. And it's a long road, because you're a ship inside of a ship. And when the aircraft carrier wants to do something, maybe reactor can play, or maybe they can't, just depending on the schedule. So keep shielding your team from the crazy. Also, the best movie, the two best movies about what life on board a ship is like. It's an old one. Mr. Roberts with Jack Lemmon, and that's old World War II era movie. But then Down Periscope. If you've ever seen Down Periscope, like that is,
yeah, I have. It's classic.
That's the kind of brotherhood and camaraderie. That's what we got. Also, reading. I kid that the Navy taught me how to read. I knew how to read before I got there. I didn't really read for fun. When you can go through like Game of Thrones and Stormlight Archive cover to cover, that's thousands on thousands of pages. And the dawn of
we're both Sanderson fans, right?
Very much so.
Yeah. Rodney, you ever heard of Brandon Sanderson?
I have not.
Yeah, he's a novelist. He's we won't go down that rabbit hole for now, because it's pretty deep. But that's high fantasy type stuff. Very alley. Very good. I think you'd like it. Yeah.
All right.
They're basically stories that never end.
Yeah.
Like there's no end to these, like the Wheel of Time, same idea. So just getting into the routine is how you pass the long days. Get into your routine.
That brotherhood and that camaraderie that you spoke of, and I seen a glimmer in your eye when you spoke of it. And I think we can all relate back to, the good times in the Army and that brotherhood and that camaraderie. How did that turn you into the leader that you are today? With the leadership style that you have today, and what obstacles have you faced? Maybe I'm assuming that maybe you had some superiors that, especially now after rejecting the COVID vaccine, but maybe they, didn't like your leadership style, or, whatever, or conflictions maybe that you had gone through where, you're trying to appease the boss, but you got your team to look out for, that type of stuff.
Hey, so full disclosure, I probably should never join the Navy. Just with my natural tendencies with leadership are just not really in line with a lot of the company stuff. So
I feel that.
with the Navy, it's always shipmate self, shipmate self, shipmate self, right? Well, and then mission. And so if you've got something at home that you got to take care of, and you're married to this ship, what do you got? You've got these two obligations, and it's a naturally disordered lifestyle, or is an inherently disordered lifestyle. Go ahead.
So I kind of want to elaborate on that shipmate self thing, because we're going to have a viewing audience that isn't familiar with the military.
Okay.
Right. So I'm assuming, the first ship is the Navy as a whole. Second ship is the ship that you're on, or the troop that you're in, or whatever you got, fleets, maybe, whatever you guys call it. I'm not familiar with Navy terminology.
Let me hop in, because I think I see where you're going with this, and I can I don't want to double explain.
I gotcha. Yeah.
So ship, the first ship, when I say ship, that means the mission.
Okay.
Okay. Whatever that mission is, the mission is to go rescue Gilligan. It's got to get done. If the mission is, the ship needs to be painted, right? A large metal object floating in an electrolytic solution. It does rust. You got to take care of the ship.
Right.
Shipmate. So that's it could be used kind of double-edged. So
you're saying shipmate. I got you. Not
shipmate.
ship, comma,
No.
ship, comma, mate, and then self.
No,
Gotcha.
shipmate.
Okay. Yeah.
So shipmate can be if you are walking down the sidewalk or through the ship and you need a haircut. There might be just sailor needs a haircut. You say, "Hey, shipmate," and that's a term of right.
Command hand.
That's command hand. Yeah,
Right.
Knife hand. Right. Or if someone's like, "Hey man, hey shipmate, come alongside. I'm trying to help you out."
Battle buddy, as the Army would use. Yeah.
Yep. That probably similar there.
Yep.
So do what needs to be done for the mission. Make sure your teammates are whole enough, not whole enough to get through the mission, and then you can take care of yourself.
Right. So this is 14 years of putting yourself last. I just want to make everybody realize, the significance of it when you are in the military. And if you are a good leader, you are sacrificing yourself every single day for your guys and for what's right. But sometimes the people above you try to tell you something that's right, that's wrong, and you run into conflictions. So
right.
Yeah.
And then I learned pretty early on that if I didn't at least attempt to work out regularly and sleep enough, I would gain a ton of weight and lose a ton of energy and just not be efficient at completing the other missions. So I was a worse person. I knew I would be not as efficient. And so I would actually tell my sailors, like, listen, guys, get your sleep. Like if you aren't operating at the top of your capability and you're not doing what you can to get to that point, then how are you supposed to fill the first mission of ship? Right? How are you supposed to be the best version of yourself, or at least enough of a version to yourself, if cool, you can get everything done, but you're going to go cry yourself to sleep every night?
Right. And then be
You know.
mentally unhealthy or, whatever. And then, which also
This-
takes away from readiness. and-
Exactly. My sailors are useless to me if they end up, at medical for mental health issues.
Right.
So I would view that as my prerogative was to try to keep my sailors as healthy as possible.
Right.
So I would view that keeping myself and my sailors as healthy as possible in order to meet the mission.
Right.
I saw that as mission number one. Mission, keep the sailors healthy enough to do the mission, and then you can help your sailors and you help yourself.
Right.
But even the disorder of the concept of being a military man or woman, putting those jobs in front of yourself, or putting your country and your mission in front of your calling and vocation as a husband, father, right? That's disordered.
Yeah.
Right. And they're asking you to be disordered. So there's the balance that, these men and women all over the country are having to struggle with.
So,
right?
So the military as a whole is gonna teach this ideology like it's linear, like it's a list instead of circular, shipmate, self, mission, so at a certain point you are taking care of yourself before the mission, before others, right? But that ideology will be spun and it'll just be, linear, start and stop, where you're putting yourself last every step of the way, so.
Well,
yeah, if it was only
and
so
because I
simple.
never did that.
Yeah.
It was because I never put myself last,
Mm.
because I would kind of run this circle.
Right.
It just complicated.
Yeah.
The process.
But it seems so obvious that's what should be done. Like sleep isn't a luxury.
You sleep when you're dead, Grant.
That's how the
that's
how the Army treats it.
Right. Exactly.
Definitely the infantry.
But that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about holistic health and fitness, that it has a category of sleep. But culturally, it's very difficult to communicate. But sleep isn't a luxury. Getting your sleep isn't putting yourself first. Like really, it's another way of putting the mission first. Like that's a requirement for performance. Fitness, nutrition, sleep, all of these things are things that you have to do to be worth a damn. Otherwise, people don't realize how cognitively impaired they are when they're in a chronic sleep debt until they stop it, and then they look back in retrospect, and it's like, your IQ drops like crazy. You're just you're worthless, and the degree of stupidity, a lot of the chicken shit of military life, I think, is tied to this. It's tied to this
Sleep
inability to look at something like this, which is it's a good notion. Because when I like shipmate self, if you look at that with nuance, or look at it as a circle, or even just the nuance to understand that, like, getting your sleep isn't the same as
putting yourself first,
bunk and playing solitaire
exactly,
or something. Those are two, or like sitting and watching movies, or like playing games on your phone, or whatever.
Those are, but it's sleep, but it's also the recreation.
Yeah, well,
but the difference is
absolutely, the difference it's all a part of it, and weighing it as to what's exactly appropriate. There's a lot of nuance to that, and I think that's one of the most valuable functions of leadership, is to help set the standard for what the appropriate balance is. To especially on the officer side, where it's like, you're supposed to be the big brains, right? Like, that's a complicated question. How much time do we need to dedicate to recreation? I mean, it depends on what morale's like, and it's like, you should have the ability to sense that and set the standard and provide recommendations and tune that system and tune
Commander,
your team in order to accomplish the mission. And this rigid idea that there's only one right way to do it, and it's this linear thing. I think that the people that think like that, they need to sleep more. You know, I think that's what's going on.
So the Navy's commissioned studies on this. We've got volumes on volumes of how important, and they try to get the a couple years ago we had the circadian rhythm sleep cycle push, where Naval Postgraduate School out in Monterey had a pamphlet that they sent, a little booklet that sent out to all the ships, and they said set up your schedules like this and that way, you know, people get sleep, and this is optimum for everyone's circadian rhythm. And we tried it, and it worked if you were alone. Right. So if you know, we were just a destroyer out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean doing our thing, no one was around us, we were mostly the masters of our own destiny. Program worked beautifully, but it's when you add in the exercises and the operational stuff that you really can't control. And so now we're all on this optimum sleep schedule of, you have 2 6-hour chunks a day where you get to sleep, but one of them is just completely overshadowed by some drill, and the other one, you just got off watch and you're supposed to go to sleep, but you have to debrief the watch on the VTC that doesn't work, the video teleconference that doesn't work because you're on a ship and you're sharing this 14.4 modem with, you know, 300 of your best friends on top of whatever the carrier's got. And the whole thing just fell apart. You know, when sailors don't sleep, and unfortunately we had a couple of serious events happen. I think it was 2016, 2017 out in Japan, where we had ships colliding, you know, ships having collisions at sea. And then we had another ship who was at anchor and grounded. And the dirty little secret is that these exactly the dirty little secret. And I don't know how prominent it is in any of the paperwork or the reports, but these 22, 23, 24-year-olds who are just barely on the other side of developed are starving themselves to sleep to try to keep their ship literally afloat.
Right. So keeping yourself mentally healthy and physically strong. I remember in basic training, the drill sergeants would always tell us, if you're physically fit, you're mentally strong. You know, and just it is a big, the whole like mind over matter and whatnot, or mind over body. Your body or your mind will give up on you way faster than your body will. And it is important to recognize those, you know, those breaking moments, I guess, where you need to like take a break and sit down and cut yourself out or whatever, ask for help. You know, maybe you're not just going to be selfish and go, you know, lay down in your bunk, but maybe you were the person that is so used to working by themselves, but now you're going to reach out and ask for help or something just to reduce that load on your mind. And I think like when it comes to taking care of soldiers, recognizing sailors or whatever, recognizing that one soldier that you're always putting the workload on, and then trying to like distribute it amongst the other ones. You know,
we have a program in the Navy, it's called hookups for F-ups. So if you have a sailor who is, like you're saying, Rodney, if you have a sailor who's a number one, right? They are just talented. They have a ton of bandwidth, capacity and everything else. You give them more work.
Yeah.
And then if you have a sailor who's not, you know, you try to like keep them from, you just keep them from taking points off your board.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, do everything you can to keep them from, you know, sinking sinking your little fiefdom there, your whatever you got going on. Now the real issue the other layer to this is we don't have an infinite workforce on board.
Right.
Okay. So hey, I'm tired. You're tired. We both need a break, but someone's going to have to bite it.
Right.
Like everyone gets a bite of the sandwich, dude. And
this makes me want to focus in on the thing that you said that I think is really key, which is op tempo. You know, and this comes down to the strategic issue, why when we're talking about recruiting and retention and problems with that and our national security strategy and what our federal government wants our military to be able to do, our military doesn't have the capacity to do those things, frankly. And so it's going to create this situation for operational tempo that is not sustainable. And that has feedback on recruiting and retention, you know, for the exact things that you said, where they can't hold on to people no matter how many bonuses they push for some of these critical positions.
I think that's the plan.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's impossible to say. Right?
I don't speak for the DOD or DON. My opinions are my own. And I believe that, you know, the op tempo is significant, right? An addition to this is I grew up in the Navy. I watched people do this. The Clinton years were some really good years for the service, right? My dad would go out to sea. He'd spend 6 months out to sea. They'd have a port hit every 2 to 3 weeks, and it'd be in the Med, right? The Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
It was good. And then 9/11, 2001, Cole in October of 2000 happened. Liberty got a little worse. Anti-terror force protection came in, and that adds another mission to your already stretched workforce. 2001, 9/11 happens, and now we're at war, and now you're going to go to sea. You're not going to be gone for just 6. You might be gone for 8, 9 months, and your port hits are going to be Duqm, Oman, and Dubai and Bahrain, and maybe Naples and Crete, Suda Bay, Crete, and Rhoda. You know, so instead of going to the cool places where you want to go, you're going to go to little industrial facilities,
right?
All over the, all over the world, and it's not as fun. So you're losing your retention, your ability to pull people in. The sense of adventure is kind of dwindling a little bit there too. It's not an easy life, and at this point, I could not possibly recommend anyone joining the service at this point.
For real, I say the same thing. But you just said something that we have asked everybody that we've talked to so far, including each other when we've talked. Is there a point in time for you where you noticed everything changed? Let's say, okay, so 2004, you joined, right? You graduated in 2008, you said?
No, I joined officially in June of 2005. Went to the Naval Academy.
Yep. And then officially commissioned when?
May of 2009.
May of 2009. And then you're on the job. You are in the Navy. Now, explain, how you felt about it at first, what your first take on it was, how you were liking or not liking it, maybe some of the things that you were disliking, but maybe it was just, just little minor BS. And then if there was a time during your 14 years besides 2020, unless it was 2020, where everything changed.
I think if I had to say the point where it kind of just, the go, no go, where things started to change the most, I would say is, was it 2011, 2012 with Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
I say
I would
2012 as well. So
I would say that's when it changed dramatically, because I think in society, we were already relatively open to the idea of homosexuality, right? Morals aside, which I realize you can't really put morals aside, but
we recognize that it is what it is and it's going to happen, and it's just part of society now. You might not agree with it.
So when that happened, right, we had a guy on the ship. This was pre Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And everyone knew him as Peaches. And everyone knew what Peaches was about. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't. It wasn't a thing. Don't Ask, Don't Tell comes around. All right, cool. Nothing changed. You still aren't allowed to have relationships at work like that in your chain of command. So realistically, nothing really changed at that point, except the messaging of this is now
of what we're allowing. Yeah.
Right. Fast forward, I think it was 2015 with the transgender stuff. So someone can't take Xanax to take the edge off for their anxiety.
Right.
But they can take hormones to make themselves think, act, look like someone of the opposite gender.
Or they can take their penis off to take the edge off anxiety.
That's completely their prerogative.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, so these things very much changed the dynamic. And so it wasn't necessarily the policy. I get it. It's same thing with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This is happening. There's nothing I can really do about it. My feelings aside don't really matter. Like no one came and pulled Lieutenant Zito at the time asking for my opinion.
Right.
I would have given it to them gladly, but no one did. The problem was actually with the training. Okay. Do you remember those the trainings that came out about the transgender policies?
I think they were different in each branch of service. So we definitely got trainings in the Army.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were.
Do you remember them being? Do you remember them being particularly well produced?
I don't remember.
Not for us. I remember it's just it was PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, it's always PowerPoint slides for us.
So we had a whole video. We're going to watch the video. We're going to have train the trainers.
I'm going to see if I can find it, and I'll insert it into the section right here after you talk about it so people can see it.
It was fantastic. Well produced. At the end of the training, they were like, all right, does anyone have any questions? And there was no way, like it was the most airtight, well done training I think the Navy has ever produced before or since. Hands down, far and away.
Are you being sarcastic right now, or are you being serious?
No.
Okay.
I
had a window pulled up, so I couldn't see
it's the amount of interest in resources that have gone into it. And so we were just talking about op tempo. And so I'll try and like steelman this real quick. Because I know that people hear this kind of thing and they immediately, especially, on the other side of the class divide and the culture war, immediately jump to bigotry. Okay, no, we have an issue with op tempo causing unavoidable negative impacts to readiness and on the human side in terms of human performance. People not able to sleep enough, take care of nutritional and fitness requirements, etc. Okay. Those operational that op tempo is something that could be influenced politically. Like there's not a hard and fast rule that our national security strategy has to be what it is, or that what we're doing necessarily contributes to the security of the American people or supports and defends the Constitution of the United States. Like that's all. I think all should be up for discussion and not just taken as an a priori truth. So now we get into the transgender thing, which creates different incentives. So like you said, certain mental health conditions are disqualifying, and they result in separation of service. And that involves the prescription of certain medications, like Xanax is one of them. How is this a different issue when we're talking about gender dysphoria, which is a behavioral health condition? How is it different? Because there are readiness considerations associated with that in terms of the amount of time that it takes, the recovery from like a penile inversion vaginoplasty is considerable. And there was a period of time where we were transitioning people out if they ruptured their ACLs because the recovery time for that.
Right.
So like these are things that aren't being discussed at all. It's just being glossed over like, hey, this is like there's no impact on readiness. This is about having the best people, etc. And there are totally reasonable arguments to be made that have to do with the impact on readiness. And that's not even getting into the incentives that signal, hey, like these are very expensive surgeries that not all insurance programs cover. And now you're sending a massive signal across the American public that
hey, join the
United
Army.
States military covers this. It covers this. And so if you are a teenager with gender dysphoria, but it hasn't been diagnosed, or even if it has been, and you don't report that candidly on your intake questionnaires, you go do basic AIT, you show up at your unit, and you go to your, primary care provider, and you go, hey, I have these issues and these concerns. And it is still considered elective, but it's something that complicates all kinds of care. It's a further wrinkle in treatment. So just from a physical therapy standpoint, if I have a patient that is considering transitioning male to female, and my perspective on physical therapy is a lot of the stuff like an anabolic response is a lot of the solution. Optimal loading, you load tissue, that creates positive changes that make those tissues more resilient and rehabilitates them to prevent future injury. Well, testosterone is a very anabolic hormone. It's very helpful to that process. So if somebody's transitioning from male to female and they're considering going on hormone blockers to block the effects of testosterone, or considering surgical options that would remove that a large portion of the testosterone, that's going to have an impact on rehab, whereas going the other direction might actually enhance rehab in the short run. So it's like these are all things that are, for some reason, we're not allowed to talk about. It's like not, but
well,
I think
what is the priority, Grant?
Exactly.
What is the priority of America's military? It's to fight and win wars, kill things, and break stuff.
Not no more.
Right. And that's the one I joined. Even
now it's hearts and minds.
Sure. So even I remember the first time I went on a ship as a active duty was summer of 2006, right after my freshman year at the academy. And I got on the ship in Norfolk, and the next place we went across the Atlantic Ocean, stopped in Naples. And they let the 6 or 8 of us, or however many there were, they said, all right, guys, we're leaving on Tuesday. Don't miss the ship. And, make sure you come back every night by whenever. All right, cool. Fast forward to 2018. And so remember, this is in Naples. If you've been to Naples, it's a beautiful city. It didn't have a reputation to be particularly safe. Nothing went wrong, but it's a city that you kind of keep your head screwed on straight.
And they probably know sailors as well.
And they know who you are.
Yeah.
We stick out, probably similar to a soldier.
And
right?
we've been there for years, probably. So yeah.
Yep. And so fast forward to 2018. Instead of being 19 or 20 years old, I'm at that point, 32, 33, 34 years old. I don't remember. And so we ended up North Atlantic. So we were in Norway, one of the safest countries on the planet. To get in trouble in Norway is actually, you have to try hard. And it's so expensive that getting any kind of alcohol related incident is monumental. You're going to break the bank. You're going to get a call from mama if you try to go drink that much. But instead of, hey guys, the ship leaves on Tuesday, don't be dumb, it was, all right, you need to go out with a Liberty buddy.
Yep.
One of you has to stay sober. You have to call us before midnight when you get to your hotel, and then you have to call us again before 7 a.m. to let us know that you woke up.
Yep. All the games,
all the games for, between, and my Liberty partner was the chaplain on board.
And these are
between the two of us, we had 8 children. Like, what do you think we're going to go do?
These are adults that the government has decided are old enough to grab a firearm and go fight for their country or whatever the case. But they are going to have their hand held and be babysat every step of the way when it comes to any of their free will during recreation activities. Somebody's always going to be there. There's always going to be rules over you. There's always going to be that leader that's telling you how bad they're going to just screw your life over if you get in trouble out there.
Yep.
And yeah, I feel you. Like we're adults, some people don't act like adults, but hey, weed them out.
Yeah.
Address those issues as they come up, because if you apply this standard to people that,
the mass punishment standard.
Yeah, well, you're hoping that folks, not in a training status. I get it in a training status, but you're hoping that once folks make it through that training status, that they are, they're service members, and a big part of how our military, from my perspective, has succeeded is by employing the principles of mission command, where, Americans are kind of notorious for this, right? The disciplined initiative at the lowest levels where there's intent provided by higher.
Yep.
And you're establishing habits and getting people to think of themselves as incompetent and incapable of executing disciplined independent initiative by treating them like children.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
We were even in countries that were Western countries.
Right.
These aren't places where the social norms that you would employ in like a New York or New York City or Richmond, Virginia, or Charlotte, North Carolina wouldn't be completely applicable. Minor tweaking in, Bergen, Norway, or Glasgow, Scotland. These are similar. It's not like you're going to Tokyo,
right,
where it is a completely different culture.
Right. I went through it down at the Texas border. Yeah, I was coincidentally deployed to the US-Mexico border in Laredo, Texas, during lockdowns. Well, right before lockdowns, and then leading all into lockdowns, all through COVID lockdowns. I just find it amazing that we miraculously had soldiers strategically placed at the border right prior to lockdowns. But yeah, we lived out of hotels for a year. They tried telling us what we could and couldn't do. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. Soldiers couldn't drive. There was literally nothing. And this is the equivalent of you like waking up in the morning and going to pull a shift as a CBP officer or as a Customs and Border Patrol officer, and then coming back, and that's your day. So just like any officer or any other agent, at the end of the day, they go do whatever they want to do, and they live a free life. And here we are in America living out of hotels and being told that our family can't come visit us. We can't have friends from the local area and whatnot, and just can't go anywhere, can't drive. It was just crazy. It's crazy nonsense. So
Well, exactly. When you go overseas, I think there's a certain understanding. Like I've
I'm
never
not from here. Yeah.
well, right. And then,
Yeah.
but even in 2006 in Italy, they were like, all right, guys, see this spot on the map? The local embassy, local CIA office, or whoever did the Liberty Brief, they said, don't go here because this is a particularly high crime spot. You're going to be a target.
Blacklisted.
Yeah.
It's a blacklisted area. That's what the
are-
Army calls it. Places that we're not allowed to go. That
There
have
are
been
blacklisted
identified.
area.
Yeah.
And actually, honest to goodness, in my experience, blacklisted areas have actually been places where you don't want to go. Like they're actually trying to help you.
Yeah.
Right. Like for the first time, or for one of the, I don't want to say one of the only times, but I felt like the Navy was trying to point me in the right direction. Right. The government is doing something in my own interest.
And
Hey, don't go there.
For the viewing audience, like in America, around a duty station, a blacklisted place might be like a head shop or a smoke shop, or a place, a bar that has been known as the management has been peddling drugs out of. It might be something like a creditor that charges way too much interest. Places that you really don't want to get involved in. So whether it's high crime and it's dangerous, there's always reasons for it to be on the blacklist. And that's enough. Just telling people that alone is enough to where when they're here at a duty station, unless they're purposely going out and looking for those things, when they're here at their duty station, they avoid those places and they live just a normal recreational life, and they do the common sense thing and stay away from dangerous places. But then that kind of just all went away, and now the military is just like, you better not do anything. You better just live in your barracks room or go home to your wife.
Something that it occurs to me, maybe this is like too subtle, but people talk about people that have overbearing parents, growing up.
Yeah, helicopter
everything's too restrictive. And then when they get just a little bit of freedom and autonomy,
they overdo it.
Like that's so I'm not the only one that's heard this. This is kind of like a common trope.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you take some pilots who went to flight take some pilots from the Naval Academy, right? Guys who selected pilot, send them down to flight school in Pensacola. I mean, they almost burn the place down every July.
Right.
Yeah. So
because they've never been free.
Yeah. So we have examples of this in the military. So
alcohol restrictions.
Yeah. Now look at the, expanding this beyond training status. So like training status, like I said, I think that there's good arguments that can be made for really controlling that and
keep your head in the game.
Pack all this training into a really short time because it's not a permanent state of affairs. But if that's how they try and have you live your life, so you can't develop this ability to self-regulate,
right?
What happens when you're in a combat situation and they don't have the ability to enforce those strict regulations anymore? What happens when there's really challenging moral situations?
Or
go ahead.
My bad. Or when you're just unable to make decisions yourself and always have to look towards the leader to tell you what to do because that's what they've been doing all along, and you don't move an inch without their say so. You don't do anything without their say so. So put that in a combat situation, where somebody has to make a decision on their own and they're looking for, the leader to make the choice for them or something. So yeah, I mean, I think it's multifaceted for sure.
Well, how much of this has been inspired by the speed of communications?
A lot of it, I think.
Okay,
higher headquarters really wanting updates on everything and metrics for everything.
Did you update?
Because it's feasible.
Did you update your slide?
Yeah.
Did you update the slide? Is your slide updated?
And the
That's
numbers are
really, and
the numbers are fake anyways.
Yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I want to, so we've been talking for a while. I want before we close up, I want to get into just Mark, your philosophy on freedom and why you declined the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
this is
gosh.
something that brought us all together essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly thankful for in a sense, I'm thankful for COVID because I've met some of the coolest people.
I said the same thing. I'm like, man, if it wasn't for the vaccine, I would have never gotten out of the Army. I would have never found this new me that took a stand and had this like spiritual awakening almost. I would have never, I'm sad for it and I still pray for everybody, but
yeah. All right. So I was on back up a little bit. I said I had an undergrad in history. I have a graduate degree in applied mathematics and simulation. So not like Grant, I'm not a medical professional, but I am uniquely qualified to understand numbers. When the plague came in March of 20, it's almost 3 years coming up on it.
That's crazy. It's almost 3 years.
Right. We should have birthday cake for it. But when it came and I was working at the shipyard, I was on an aircraft carrier in the shipyard, and people employed at shipyards, they have some extraordinary talented technicians and laborers, leadership and management. And then they got some like, hey man, you're barely functional. I don't know if you've taken a shower this week or this month. But
how did you join?
You're hired, right?
Yeah.
So we had some of the like, some of the most not hygienic people I've ever met wandering around this ship. And I'm thinking to myself, if this is the most deadly virus on the planet, why aren't those guys like dead in the corner somewhere?
Right.
What happened? And so we go through and we're because I was in reactor, we were essential, right? So here I am trying to explain to my sailors why they have to show up every day, where,
everybody else is shamming.
Airman Timmy shows up once every 10 days for 2 hours so that he can socially distance. And social distance was like code speak for I'm going to go do what I want.
Right. But then on the days where they make everybody come in, they stand in a mass formation.
Yeah.
Well, at least in the Army, a battalion formation. Hey, let's bring everybody in together. Let's give a speech of everything that's going on. It's like, isn't this...
Let me breathe on you. Hang on. Yeah. So, and then they said, all right, well, if you get COVID, you can't come in for 2 weeks. And we're going to tickle the back. Like, apparently you have to wear a mask over all this, but COVID only lives right there just on the other side of that part of your skull. Because when they stuck that thing into your face, that's where it feels like they're poking. So, the sailors realized, oh man, if I get sick, I get 2 weeks off.
Right.
And so like they're over there trying to lick all the doorknobs and, hug all the keyboards and, climb all over each other, trying to get themselves on some sort of list so that they can get 2 weeks off. So you don't even have to be sick with a positive. You just have to be the close contact of somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And at that point, that was free range. We had frequent flyers on the close contact list.
This is exactly what was going on down at the border. Like, we're living out of hotels. Each roommate is on a different shift, so that way they can have the room to themselves for a period of time. But then this person is going to sit in a vehicle with this person who's roommates with this person. And I'm like,
so they were like,
stopped to think about this.
They were like, you're the close contact of a close contact. You get 3 days off.
Yeah.
just to make sure. And then we're going to stick this up your face before you can come back. Like, well, so I'm watching this project just get farther and farther behind, because if one person gets sick, then all of their friends take off for a couple of weeks, and we're all on shift work trying to make all this work. And then, yeah, just kind of watching all this play out. And then I start hearing about a vaccine. I'm like, ooh, what is this vaccine? That doesn't sound like a good plan. Oh, it's a new technology. Still not really on board. I call up my JAG buddy. I said, hey man, what can they do? What is this? And he goes, they can't do anything until it's FDA approved. So just keep punting until they approve it. They probably won't, because that takes decades. Like, oh, all right, we're good. So, a couple months go by. It's a couple of months go by, and they're like, everyone has to get the shot. And then they had different photos around the ship, like a communist fist coming out of the ocean with a vial, with a needle in its hand. It says, this is how we're going to stop COVID-19. I'm like, you're not inspiring me to do anything at this point.
It's very wild.
Yeah. And then the detailer called, the guy who writes the orders. He's like, hey, I need you to sign your next contract. And I'm like, listen, dude, I don't know if they're going to make this. And I told him straight up, I was like, I don't know if they're going to make this a mandatory thing or what is happening with it, but I don't want any strings to the Navy. And that's a lot of strings. I told you that's a lot of strings that they'd have on me. If they tried to kick me out, I'd owe a lot of money back. So I just said, no, I'm just going to see what happens. And I ended up getting another set of orders to a different location. I was on shore tour, which is, I guess the Army calls them B billets or non-deployable or something to that effect. So I wasn't on a ship anymore. And I ended up down at Little Creek, which is Virginia Beach. It's a base in Virginia Beach in a non-deploying billet. So when the vaccine mandate happened, they were like, everyone has to go get it. It's FDA approved now. And I'm like, that doesn't sound very right. But I'm still, how about no? It's not FDA approved because all your vials still say EUA on them. They're like, well, but they're FDA approved and we ordered you to. I'm like, no, not going to happen.
And nobody took the time to read the FDA letters. Everybody heard what came across the news and rushed out to get it. And then everybody heard the policy and rushed out to get it. And everybody said that they weren't going to get it. And as soon as their job was threatened, so they all got it.
So now we're going to get back to that retention thing that we started with, right? The Navy's been pretty good to me. All in all, they've been pretty good to me. I've caused a good amount of shenanigans. Not really great at doing what I'm told and everything else. But I got an undergrad. They sent me to grad school. I got a fancy graduate degree out of the Navy. And I'm a nuclear engineer. Right. So when they said, you're gonna lose your job if you don't go get the shot, I'm like, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds bet. And they said, no, for real. We're gonna take your job and you're gonna have to go live on the street. I'm like, bet. And they said, well, why don't you just resign if you're so bent on getting out? And I was like, oh.
I'm not giving you that satisfaction.
No. Yeah. No, because spite is an incredibly warm blanket.
Right.
And I'm just not interested.
Right.
And they're like, but you have to wear this mask everywhere. I'm like, I mean, maybe.
I was pissed off about it at first, but then I ended up wearing it proudly. It was like a signal to let everybody, all the leadership know, all the whoever know.
Yeah, it was like my crown, right?
Yeah, it's not like they didn't know, but and it got to the point where they didn't even want me to come to work. They're like, here's this influential sergeant first class that is refusing the vaccine, and soldiers see that. Let's just not. I didn't go to work for a year and nobody gave a shit.
Yeah, it's insane. Now I've always had to go to work. The good liberty for me ended in like May of 2020.
Okay.
So we only got like 6-7 weeks of really good liberty, like every other day, every third day go in.
Oh, I meant right before I ended up getting out. I stopped
Oh,
showing
lucky
up,
duck.
and they didn't care because I was the opinionated guy that was
Yeah.
calling out policy and refusing everything, and making it known to everybody else that they also didn't have to follow through with this. And I was emailing religious
Mhm.
exemption letters, and so all of the people in my battalion ultimately that pushed to get an exemption, they all got like the paperwork from me and whatnot. So
Yeah.
so they're
I
like,
mean,
yeah, we don't want this dude around anymore.
So the exemption or the mandates come out and I'm like, I should probably go look at this exemption thing. Ended up schooling some chaplain on Thomas Aquinas and natural law, because I didn't feel like I could stand on this was tested using fetal cells, because I had taken all the other vaccines.
I didn't even use that argument.
Just
I didn't
willingly.
even think about it. Yeah.
Well, my argument, I said bodily autonomy. You can't pass my skin without my consent, especially to change my DNA. Right. In polite society, we call that rape.
Right. Exactly.
So I went with that one, sent it in, got denied. But also, like, at that point, I had started to kind of get connected. I got connected with military freedom keepers. I was one of the 14 declarations that RFK Junior's organization took back in September or so of 21. I was on that crew, and that got me set up with I don't know if you met Dave Beckerman yet. So it got set up. Yeah, it got set up with Dave, with his, initially it was the one of the signal groups, and then we got set up with a handful of other I mean, just super heavyweight players like John, I don't remember his name at this point. It's been so, yeah. Anyhow, John Sharp. We got set up with John Sharp, who's been in the fight since '92, right? He actually got kicked out of the Navy and they let him back in because, how some people find going out and working in their yard life-giving. This guy finds case law life-giving. So he's just that he's just that kind of guy. But then we started the signal group that was business only. And from there I pulled Rob Green in. Turns out he was on fire for the cause too. And we just ended up building this community of people that cared. So this camaraderie that we had on the ships that a lot of us lost, because they were ostracized, kicked off the ship, weren't allowed to go anywhere. In the Navy, in a lot of ways, they were the harshest, especially if you were assigned to a ship.
Right.
Because
there's no doubt they were the first ones to come out with the interchangeability memo. Where they didn't come out and do that in the Army ever. They that came from Terry Arterin. And
I think she was Air Force.
Used. Yeah, well, no, I think she was working undersecretary DOD level.
Okay.
When she did that, but the first interchangeability memo was Navy, where they're just like, look, it doesn't matter if it's not FDA approved. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's either they're the worst lawyers on the planet, or they just don't speak English, like, or
they understand that,
or they know exactly what they're doing, and
they understand that it's not about the law, it's about power. Because that's what one of the lawyers said in one of the recent cases. When he was arguing in front of the judge, they said, well, why you guys are violating these religious freedoms? And it's like, no, we're not. Like, that a court has to say that for that to be true. And it's like, okay, so what you're saying, you can violate
like
the law?
Exactly.
And how should
he's like, well, yeah, that's how it works. And that's how these people think that it works. You look at the federal mandate for requiring wearing masks on air travel. Like that's clearly unconstitutional. They're still trying to implement that, and they know it's unconstitutional. Same deal with the CDC moratorium on evictions. CDC can't keep you from evicting people off of property that you own, but they did it for over a year. And the current administration knew that it was unconstitutional, and they were like, yeah, well, the Supreme Court can make us stop. And so it didn't end until the Supreme Court made them stop. That's how this stuff works.
Exactly. I'm ready for it to be over. I can't believe we're still talking about something 3 years deep.
For real, but it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, it needs to keep going.
Because now that so I'm really confused on everything that's going on, right? I foreseen it coming, and I medically retired. So I got lucky enough to not get fucked with or messed with. I had my religious exemption that shielded me from the nonsense, and they still tried doing the nonsense. And I just throw out policy and regulation at them, pretty much saying, bro, I'm untouchable. As much as you hate it, and as much as you want to freaking stick that needle in my arm for all the briefings that you had to sit through, that you had to report that a sergeant first class, a platoon sergeant, was refusing the vaccine. Like, I know how badly you want to do it, but guess what? You can't. I know how badly you want to not give me a retirement award, but guess what? You can't. I know how bad, and I just covered like all of my bases and whatnot, but it was really like, where's the leadership? Where's the people that took their creeds and their oaths to
well, it's the people who we expected to, I've always expected my captains to shield me from stupid. Like I think that's as a junior officer, that's a expectation, right?
Yeah, that 06, like the flag officer is another deal, but the 06, they're not completely political creatures yet.
I never really expected my commanders to shield me from bullshit, but I expected my commanders to enforce like what is legally and morally right.
So
you know what I mean?
Here's the disappointment. The disappointment is that at some point when these 06s are looking out at their officers, right? I mean, I'm not just some dude walked in off the street. I've got education. I've been around a while. And he looks and he goes, you're not getting the shot. I'm not at all professionally interested on why you made that decision. Go get your shot. It's like, wait a minute. Right. All right. So I'm just one, but what about all these other people?
Right.
All these other senior enlisted officers, junior enlisted, spec ops, guys who we train to think on their own are saying not only no, but absolutely not. Right. And you're not professionally interested at all. Not in the least.
Because he knew that they were all going to fold, because they all did.
Yeah. A lot of them did. The most, one of the,
like 90%.
Easily. So the most heartwarming moment of this whole thing was when when the team that I was working on, the business signal group that I was working with, got connected somehow to the SEALs in the Texas case, right, with Judge O'Connor. And they were, I think, to the man, either enlisted or warrant officer. And we got one of them into this business group, and this was December of 21. And he goes, are all of you officers? He said, no, but most of us. He goes, we had no idea. We had no idea that there were people, brothers and sisters in arms, that far up the food chain who were saying kick rocks, Navy.
Yeah.
Right. And it was heartening to, kind of be that example for someone who for men that I hold in extremely high regard, because I could never do that. But to be viewed with that same, to have that same kind of respect reciprocated by someone I so deeply and profoundly respected anyhow. Like that was,
excuse me. Sorry.
I'm talking, dude.
Dude,
I thought I was muted.
Yeah, I feel that 100%. I felt the same thing because I don't know. I think Mark, like you and I are kind of similar. Like, I haven't gone deep into my background on like ideology and stuff, but like, let's just say I'm a free thinker. All right. And I'm kind of like a little bit of an odd man out as a military person for that reason. And to all of a sudden be aligned with some of these serious folks, in a way that kind of, like there's a strong bond there. It kind of was inspiring.
Yeah, we have a Navy captain in that group.
Yeah.
So I
captains and colonels.
I got out before I really had to like get involved. So I got out July of 2022. But I had submitted my religious exemption August of 2021, and it took until April of 2022 to get it back and be denied. That's when I was told I have 5 days to submit an appeal. And that's when I told them, hey, I don't have to submit an appeal. I am within the window of exemption because I am getting out and my leave date starts before the August 1st or whatever, July 31st, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they still made me type up an appeal. So I typed up an appeal that really shed some light on the leadership in the battalion and in the brigade. And they decided to not send up my appeal. So I got out of the Army and I got to thinking about it. And I was like, no, you know what? Like that was silencing by them refusing to send up my religious exemption appeal. They are suppressing my religious voice, my religious freedoms. And I got a hold of Grant. That's how me and Grant got into contact. I found his blog and I reached out to him to see if he had the email contact for the Secretary of the Army for the Department of Manpower and Affairs. That's who it was supposed to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I tagged all three of them and I attached everything, right? My initial memo, the chaplain's memo, the PA memo, my original exemption, and then my appeal. And I'm like, I still want an answer for this because technically I was in the Army when I submitted this to you guys. And I would still like a piece of paper because I think it would be beneficial to have a memorandum or a piece of paper from the federal government that is acknowledging your religious freedoms when it comes to a vaccine, just in case I want to get employed somewhere else or later on down the road, they try to make this, more strict or try to do it all over again, which they're going to. We already know, we can already see that they're just going to do it again, to push for more COVID passports, tracking, surveillance, injections, whatever. They're going to do it again.
Just for the record, I'm also anti-microchip.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Just throwing that one, preemptively. So I also put in the religious accommodation. It was denied. They gave me 10 calendar days, not business days, to submit my appeal. And I ended up submitting a 344-page appeal.
I didn't even know what I was appealing.
Wow.
I didn't even get the stuff back from it was supposed to.
Oh, no.
Supposed to be my memo, the chaplain, the PA, and then it was supposed to be my commander's memo, and then it was supposed to go to battalion, and he was supposed to produce a memo, brigade, they were supposed to produce a memo, division commander, and then they were supposed to produce a memo, and then to the office of the Surgeon General, who makes the decision. And when I got it back, or when I got word back, it was just a counseling statement that says, your exemption was denied. You have 5 days to type up an appeal. I'm like, what am I appealing? I don't even know what got denied. Where's all my other paperwork? Where is it? Was all a game from the get-go, but at least it protected us if we followed the steps, but it was never ever going to be taken seriously.
So by the time we got to that point, I was already hooked up with these different groups. And so we were all trading information, and they were primarily Navy. We were trading information back and forth. We kind of knew the hoops to jump through. Hey, what are we appealing? Well, we don't know what we're appealing, but you can email this guy in DC and he will send you your package that was denied. And he's pretty prompt with it. So next thing you know, he's getting just flooded with emails. Poor man.
Oh, wait, so somebody can get me my package?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What's that guy's name?
No. Well, he's Navy.
Yeah. FOIA, like you would have to do a FOIA.
It's a
you.
privacy
Well,
act.
that's
privacy act for your own.
That's what I was originally going to do. But
so we ended up getting it back. I sent in the 344 pages with something like 42 or 53. I don't remember exactly enclosures, but it was all documented. And I definitely did not compress that PDF file because
I want to take up that space.
I don't want this to be fun for you.
Right.
I'm gonna just crush your whole morning.
I take it they didn't address a single point that you made.
I've not been responded to yet.
I'm gonna assume
they demanded this in 10 days.
Well, they denied that appeal, didn't they?
No.
Oh.
My appeal has never been denied.
I'm gonna assume that
because that happened a lot.
Read it.
That happened a lot in the Navy, didn't it? That's why you guys got that injunction, was because you guys got a lot of appeal denials.
So what inspired the injunction? And you can read all this in Rob Green's book that's set to come out here in a couple months.
Oh, yeah, I'm very excited.
What's the name of that?
Do
you know?
Stand by. I have no idea.
We'll push it. We'll push it.
It'll get pushed.
We're going to get to talk to Rob at some point.
Ooh, that'll be exciting. I'd like to talk to Rob. I'd like to be in on that.
Yeah, we can probably
let
him talk mostly. But so what ended up happening with that one is through a random series of events, I pulled Rob and another Navy lieutenant commander into the group. The Navy lieutenant commander wanted to know what the deal was with his particular exemption. And so he emailed this office, just cold email. And he gets a email back from somebody. I don't want to go too into it because I mean the source is still very, very anonymous, heavy protected. But anyhow, this dude,
we should try to get him on. Just black out his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he ends up calling Matt back or emailing Matt back, and Matt just picked up the phone and called the guy. And the guy's like, everything's going crazy. I have no idea what's going on. This, that, and the other. Well, we end up getting some information from this guy in the form of different PDFs and files. And so that one of those files ended up being the backbone of the SEAL case in North Texas. That's the Navy SOP file, right?
Oh, for them.
Yeah.
Denying.
Like where all the denials were all pre-formatted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that file. Right. So we were able to really push and get that That's what inspired the judge to write the injunction. That's how we got the injunction in March of 22.
Do you have these things on digits that you'd be
You know
willing
who
to
reports on all of it is
share?
Danny at Terminal CWO. You know, he reported on that. I know for sure.
Yeah, he did. He posted
So,
it, but that's
so
where
there's-
I know where he got it.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, but that's a good source if anyone wants to follow along and see a lot of this stuff. Like he covered pretty much everything in addition to a lot of other
What is it?
anything corruption related. It's Terminal CWO. So he's got a Telegram channel, he's got an Instagram, and he's got a site called Terminal X. So the T.
Oh yeah, you told me about this one. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, but
So he does a lot of good work.
Being kind of having a front row seat to all that, and then just Rob being so tenacious.
Yeah, he's tenacious is the perfect word.
Yeah, there's no quit in this guy. Fear is not of the Lord, right? And I'm thankful and grateful every day that I didn't care about my job.
That's where I feel like
how much harder would this have been if someone cared about their job?
Yeah, I cared about it, and I still care about it a lot. I care about it a lot. It's just that there's things that are more important, and your principles. In order to do my job, I have to be a man of principle.
Right.
It's that simple. And so I can't have both. Have both.
So we taught like being a Navy nuke is hard. It's a hard life, right? I was lining myself up to move on.
Right.
And then when they're like, hey, you need to do this or you're going to get moved on, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I was pretty salty about the Army already when I got out, and I had already been complaining about back issues for the last 6 years. And it just so happened, like right before summer block leave, I was telling my commander, because I just ended up venting to him. I'm like, dude, I'm hurting. I've been hurting. I'm grumpy. I hate life. Like I love my soldiers, but I cannot stand the Army. And I was like, every day I'm miserable because of the pain. And then that makes everything even tenfold worse. And he's like, I had no idea that you felt this way. I have no problem reaching out to the PA and requesting that you be enrolled into the med board process. And I came back from summer block leave. And right when we came back, that's when we were told that that's when the policy came out. And I was like, yep, I'll take that med board. So,
yeah.
And then I started the process from there. So I feel you a little bit about, not caring about your job by the time that you left. I was pretty tired of my job, but now after everything, like legitimately after everything that I had gone through because of the vaccine, I will always reflect on my times with my soldiers, but I am no longer proud to claim myself as a veteran, to affiliate myself with the Army or its leaders. I don't want to feel like that. But by the time I left, I was like, dude, I am so done with the Army. And I was worried that when I got out, I would miss it, because you hear stories about people that got out and they're like, dude, it sucks. I wish I would have never got out. I haven't thought once about it. I'm like, this is the best thing that could have ever happened, and like for once in my life in the last 14 years, I'm like free away from the Army, away from the new Army that I grew to hate, not the old Army that I really loved before they dropped the bomb on me.
The intent with when all this was happening, I mean, even in 20, when I showed up to the carrier, the end of 19, when I showed up to the carrier, my intention was to resign anyway.
Right.
Like I wasn't staying. I wasn't going to make it to 20. So it was just like I said, oh, you want me to do this? You're going to lose me. Well, my intention is to get out anyway. Like, right. I'm going to ride the wave, man. Like this looks like fun. This looks like finally I've got a worthy mission.
Right. Something to fight for, Yeah.
I do. I see it the same way. I see this as, I see it as orthogonal. Well, I mean, maybe it's not even orthogonal. Maybe it's central to, my professional purpose.
A new
It's like
beginning.
we took an oath to
Yeah.
the Constitution, and this has been a deliberate effort to undermine our constitutional rights. Like the
Yeah.
First Amendment's very, very clear as to what it's all about, and
And it's the first.
they're trying to tamp down on our freedom of expression as service members, and also just of the society at large. And if they can get away with it, like if the federal government can get away with doing it to service members, then it's a lot easier for private companies to
Yeah.
get away with it without, because that takes individual lawsuits and stuff. Like
Yeah.
Right.
Some CEO of a corporation doesn't take an oath to the Constitution,
Right.
but all of our bosses did. And so it's like, what are they doing? It's absolutely reprehensible. And if nobody's willing to stick around and try and set the example and call attention to that and say, hey, the oaths that we took is important, then who's going to be left to do it? Are we just going to give this organization over to those folks?
So fast forward to the NDA this year, right? Came out and rescinded whatever that word means. Apparently it's a special word.
The NDA. What are you talking? Non-disclosure
The
agreement?
National Defense Authorization
Yeah.
Act, right?
Oh, NDAA. Gotcha.
Yeah. When that came out and they're like, all right, COVID vaccines rescinded. I mean, I walked into work with high fives. It was almost as good as the first day with no masks for anybody. Right.
It doesn't feel like a win though. In my case, right? Because and I was literally just getting ready to bring it up because this is like kind of what it all boiled to, right? Like everything.
That's bittersweet.
Everything over the last.
Everybody that got pushed out, it's like those 8,000 plus people that got pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
Just like what Rodney said, they're not out and being like, oh man, I really want to get back in. No, they're like, so it's a relief.
Yeah, glad that's over.
Because the culture is turned in a way such that the people that didn't want to get vaccinated, it is a sort of a litmus test. And,
there's no way
leadership knows that.
There's no way I would go back if they had kicked me out and then they called me. I don't even know if it is a call. Maybe it's something that you're forced.
They've been texting people.
Yeah. And I'm assuming they have a choice, I would assume, of stay out or come back in. There's no way I would come back in. And the thing that really bothers me is, now that it's rescinded, everything that had happened over the last 2 years has been for nothing. People have been 90% of soldiers or sailors or Marines or airmen have been injected with something that they have no idea of, all for nothing because it didn't matter because everything got rescinded anyways. And
that's not their narrative, man. Their narrative is they saved millions of lives.
Right. But okay,
we only have 2 million service members, but whatever.
Let's play the hero.
Counting's never been their thing, Grant. We've talked about that before.
No.
Let's play the hero narrative.
Must be especially painful for a mathematician.
Let's play the hero narrative to now they realize their wrongdoing, or new people came in and said, oh, this is wrong, and then managed to get everybody to change their mind and stuff rescinded. But like we're still at the end of the day, right? So they allow everybody back in, but at the same time, what are we going to do about accountability for those people that enforced it? You know what I mean? And that's what I really want. You're going to tell soldiers they can come back in. You're not going to pay them back pay. You're making them pay back bonuses. This is as far as the Army. I'm not sure Navy or anything else. Making them pay back bonuses from that enlistment of which they were kicked out. But at the same time, you're letting them back in. But at the same time, none of those leaders that were forcing crap upon them are held accountable. And now I think soldiers are in a position now. The best thing that the government could have done was just shut up and roll with it. Like whatever decision that they have made, they really messed up by letting people back in, right? Because now soldiers that were,
that was an act of Congress, dude. That was the American people speaking.
It was.
That was the American people saying, repudiating this nonsense. It was not the DOD. It was not SecDef. It was not the president. It was the American people having their will enforced through
I don't remember
the populist wing of congressional members of Congress. Period.
Yeah. I don't remember voting on anything. I don't remember having a choice.
People called up their congressmen and women, and they let them know that this was important. And it got added to the NDAA,
which they had been doing from the start.
Yeah. And so, like it was the one issue, right? That was the main issue of contention that Kevin McCarthy's speakership was hinging on.
So
and
I think
he tried to make that anyway. I won't go into the
ultimately this is a start. Okay. But at the same in the same vein, there are lives ruined, lives put on hold, careers ruined,
people deceived,
our brothers and sisters in arms hurt,
relationships ruined,
marriages destroyed over this one, families, everything else, right? It's been a big deal. I want to know. I mean, my career is done. I'm moving on.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. One way or another, I am moving on. But for the people who, may have, maybe the captain of a ship who decided he didn't want to get stabbed, right? He lost his job. He was dismissed for cause or moved on or replaced or somehow taken out of that role, right? His career is irreparably damaged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if he comes back in, he can't, or even if he got out, or what however it works, there's no coming back.
He's still in, but there's no coming back from that.
Right.
The executive officer of a ship or the number 2 guy at a command, if you were removed, there's no coming back from that. Right. If they say, oh, we're going to take all the stuff off of your record that had anything to do with the vaccine, the GOMAR, the letter of reprimand, the letter, whatever's, we're going to take all that off your record. All right, cool. Well, my fit reps and evaluations may still say, may have been marked lower. They don't say anything about vaccinations.
Right.
But they may have been marked low. It had an impact. Like there's intangible impact. So when the NDA comes out and says, well, we can't, we're going to do this, and all the records are going to be corrected. Well, there's still, in terminal CWO, Danny goes into this, that there's the shadow policies that are impossible to correct, to track down, to correct, if they want you, you've been in the organization long enough. If they want to mess something up for you, it's going to get messed up
for sure.
Culturally enforced. A lot of things. There's implicit rules, cultural enforcement. I want to speak to the people that got relieved of command. People don't necessarily realize those folks spent their entire lives. Those commands are culminating moments for those people where they prepared
18 years
take those
deep
position.
That's an 18-year commitment to get to that point.
And it's a dream that they had, something that they prepared and built the skill set to do that job and take care of soldiers, take care of sailors.
Yeah.
That's what they were all about. And
it was all the good ones.
confronted with this impossible decision, sacrifice your principles or give that up, and that those jobs aren't coming back.
They're in the crew. I'll let you know who they are, and you can talk to them offline. I think some of them may still be in litigation type stuff, so I don't know how open or
Right.
available they are to discuss. But I mean, it's good perspective, even if they don't want to go live or go
Right.
on the podcast.
Yeah. I just really want to know, I'm sure they don't give a shit. Honestly, I'm sure they don't give a shit. But I was treated very poorly in a very subtle way. You know what I mean? So it wasn't it was just trying to like cut me out, or I mean, I was really good at my job. I have a good career, an impressive resume. I was, I was kind of, I don't want to say untouchable, but I always did the right thing. I knew the policies. I knew, so I could be this opinionated person that probably should have received some sort of UCMJ for like my mouth or whatever, or my opinions or whatever. But at the end of the day, nobody did that because of the results that I produced, the work that I was doing, and they just knew that I was right. Like, how are you going to punish somebody for speaking up when you know that they're right about something? Right. So, but all those people that treated me poorly and act like I was just some right-wing freaking radical, MAGA loving, non-vaxxer,
Didn't you go to the training, comrade?
Extremism training. Yeah.
There was
We
extremism.
talked about that.
There was
Yeah,
extremism training where we learned to not be extremists.
Oh yeah, I remember that. But I'm saying like that was after January 6th and all that. But I'm saying just the vaccine alone, the people that enforced it, the people that kicked people out, the people that ruined lives, do they feel sorry? Are they like, oh crap, they were right? Were they just blinded by nonsense? Were they scared of the boss? Did they want to say something and they didn't? Or did they really believe in COVID vaccinations and or was it all a numbers game? Or do any of them feel bad, for what they did to me and to everybody else?
At this point, it doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't,
like,
but it's like a closure thing. You know what I mean? It's like
it can be. But it ultimately, like, how they feel should never affect how we feel.
Oh no, it doesn't.
Like,
it's just something that I would love to know. Like, man, I hope they feel terrible for what they did. You know what I mean? Like, it's a spite thing. It is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I see them, I think to myself, I hope they live a long and prosperous and happy life without an enlarged heart.
I also think that, I do pray for everybody.
Because I know that they went, they're the guys in line to get boosted too.
Yeah.
Like, the ones who believe in it, like, I feel bad because they have a hole in their head.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, we're told to instruct the ignorant, but we're also told to be charitable.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, when do you tell people, like, hey man, you have a hole in your head and there's something seriously wrong with you.
Right.
You're still wearing that stupid face diaper.
Right.
And
yeah. Oh man, yeah.
Like, there's something seriously wrong with you, dude.
The people that I see, and they'll be by themselves and whatnot. Like, nobody's around. Like, you can drive around the city or whatever, and you'll still see people wearing masks. Like, one dude I seen, he was like a farmer in overalls and whatnot. You could just tell, dude works on tractors, or he's just corn fed, and he has a mask, and it is just covered in oil from him taking it on and putting it off. I'm like, dude, why do you even have that thing on? And he was nowhere, like, nobody was around.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, what's going on with you right now?
I mean, anytime I see a new piece of evidence, anytime something new gets published, I'm always tempted to be like, oh, I want to send this to all my people that ostensibly care about the scientific literature and what a rigorous investigation of these questions says.
Yeah.
People that care about, say, a Cochrane review. In medicine, a Cochrane review is meta-analysis, systematic review, the highest level of evidence, very conservative in their conclusions, and taken very seriously by every one of these people that is so that we're happy to wear masks because why not? And it's like, well, why not? Cochrane Reviews just published last week and said that masks do little to nothing, which
we always
mirrors,
knew.
it's what the meta-analysis that had already been published in 2020 had said.
I think Bernstein, Berenson.
Berenson, yeah.
In one of his books early on, more of a pamphlet, he goes, I genuinely wish masks work. We would have less sickness if they worked. Unfortunately, they don't. So what are we doing here?
Right.
Yeah, but the motivated reasoning is it is what it is. And so, all I'm going to do if I send this to somebody is it's just going to get upset with me. And, it's the hypocrisy that grinds in me. It's the idea that they want to argue and use logic and reason, and it's like, I will do that all day. I'd love to do that, but then as soon as it's something that they don't agree with or challenges one of their sacred beliefs that isn't open to being questioned because only stupid people disagree with it.
Good word. They have founded this new religion.
Yeah. So that's what frustrates me, is just because I like to discuss things. I like to lay out my reasoning and say, hey, where's my reasoning wrong? And they don't want to play because it's like, oh, well, giving that reasoning the time of day just gives it credence and credibility. And it's like, isn't that a clue? Yeah. Isn't it a clue that if talking about it gives it credence and credibility, that maybe, what if it's true? Like, what if it's true? It's like, it's not even possible that it's true. This total lack of epistemic humility that these people have. I've been proven wrong before. I've been wrong about things before. Have these people never been wrong? Do they think it's impossible that they're wrong? It's just, that's what really bends my mind into knots if I think about it.
Yeah. It's the science, Grant.
Yeah.
It's the science.
Yeah. It's my differing view on what constitutes science. It's like, I'm very passionate about science, and just that right there, like that they've co-opted the term and they stole
science.
Yeah, made it something that is governed by top-down institutional control and consensus
with manipulated data.
That's not what it is. It's not a consensus. It's a process that helps you know things about the universe. It's not, an institution and a consensus doesn't do that. But yeah, I mean, you're science man. So we've been talking for a long time. I want to close up by leaning on your on this same topic, leaning on your educational background and your background in mathematics. So it's like, you have that background, and we were just talking about this in my frustrations. What is something that's really stuck out to you? You could pick anything. This is kind of the last thing I want to talk about, because we're coming up on over 2 hours.
Yeah.
But just your ability and your understanding of mathematics and statistics, and just the level of stupidity and lack of fidelity to basic principles of statistics and mathematical accuracy, and using those tools appropriately within the military, pertaining to COVID or not.
I mean, I think just the idea that we were told a third of America was going to die, right? I mean, like, the extraordinary numbers that they were using, the news organizations and whoever was using initially, right, 3 years ago, we were told a lot of people are going to die, and I'm open to the idea of, hey, if this is dangerous, let's do something. But once it became apparent that it wasn't,
right,
like once it became immediately obvious that people were surviving, doing well,
nobody's being found dead in their homes,
making TikTok videos,
right?
Nurses with TikTok videos. I don't think they did themselves any favors with that. But statistically and from a mathematics point of view, yeah, I think that was it. That was it. When what was predicted didn't come to fruition, and the unwillingness to reevaluate and reattack.
Right.
I think that was, and I know it's not some heady mathematical thing.
No, but
I don't even think
that is a
it's
principle. That is a
common
principle of statistics, you
Yeah.
know, because you're talking about models. And, you know, the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to mind is that Imperial College of London model that Neil Ferguson, right, that was his name, came out with, that predicted some number of millions of deaths.
Mhm.
And it's like you said, you know, reality wasn't reflected by that model. And so what do? If you're a serious professional in that field, well, you recognize that your model's wrong, and
Yeah.
you
Adjust the input
realize you
data.
got to adjust. And they didn't do that. They just, you know, went with that same assumption.
Exactly. And then also in some of the DMed stuff, I got to work with that with the Defense Medical Epidemiology database.
Yeah.
I had gotten into that, some of those, and then modeled some of them, you know, and if that stuff was accurate, it would be impossible to know someone. Like if the numbers were accurate from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there's no way you wouldn't know a dozen people with enlarged hearts on active duty. Right?
Yeah.
As just some dude wandering around the ship, I should be able to tell you 5 or 6 guys, gals on board, sailors, who had this specific health problem.
And you're talking about after they took the database down and adjusted the
After the
numbers
glitch
from 2016 to 2019.
Post glitch. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
Post glitch.
Okay. So I got one more question before we close out. If you're ready to close out, Grant, I've asked everybody this so far, and I plan on asking everybody that comes on in the future. This is your one time to talk to the world, our whole like 27 subscribers, you know. But what's your message to the world? It can be about anything: leadership, morals, character. You know, what do you want to tell the world right now?
Don't be afraid.
All right.
It's simple. Like, don't be afraid. If you're where you were, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Right. I feel that. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, it was great having you on, Mark.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, very nice meeting you. I hope to talk to you more. I've been taking notes this whole time. Like I said, I didn't get involved like I wanted to. At the beginning it was, but it was a lot of like Google, a lot of like researching policies, regulations, laws, that type of stuff. And there wasn't really like groups necessarily, like well-founded groups, by the time I had, you know, gotten out and realized that my fight was kind of done.
Right.
And my fight kind of started again when I realized that, hey, my voice was silenced. My appeal was never sent up. It should have been. That's when I reached out to Grant. But I mean, I don't care if the appeal goes up anymore. But ultimately, if I never would have had that thought, I would have never met Grant. We would never have this amazing, awesome leadership podcast. And, you know, or meet you, Mark, or anybody else, you know. So it's definitely, you know, it's definitely had some negative effects in my life, but, you know, it's also bringing positivity as well. And hopefully it's the genesis of a whole new chapter, you know.
I think anyone who didn't get stabbed has a net gain right now.
So
yeah, and it's a way that, you know, just like any identity that you have, you can use to build connection with people.
Right.
You know, it's a way to build connection with people, with like-minded people. And that's
Exactly.
not to say it's exclusive. It's just another one of those things. And I'm grateful for it because grateful to have you guys as friends and get to have this great conversation. And going forward, if we're able to talk to Rob, like you said, if you want to be involved in that, to be able to ask some questions, we'd love to have you on for that as well.
Yeah, that'd be
cool.
pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Cool. Thanks for your
Have a
time.
great
right.
afternoon.
Until
care.
next time. Later.
Bye.